And we're getting first attendees. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 6th ChatDKG Open Office Hours. We are going to wait for maybe one or two more people. I see Mislav is joining. Welcome, Mislav.
Hello, hello.
And welcome everybody else. We have a bunch of cool people to present today. And a bunch of attendees coming in. So anyhow, while everybody is settling in, I might as well just share the screen as per usual. How's everybody doing? Are you guys doing fine?
Yeah.
Feeling the heat over there in Croatia?
I don't know. I haven't left the apartment in like 5 days, so somebody will have to tell me. No, it's fine. I leave at evening, so you know.
Yeah, it's been horrible here. It's like Belgrade is like an oven. So pretty much the same for me. Been barely leaving the apartment, and when I do, it's not that good.
It's just to go play music for people at where it was dim.
That's happening Sunday. Yeah,
Sunday. Okay.
That's Sunday. Yeah, we're doing an ambient experimental music session. If anybody wants to, anybody's in Belgrade and wants to join, there's that as well.
Yeah.
Hop in a car. It's not that far for you.
Yeah. Well, it's unfortunate that I won't, but if you ever want to be in Zagreb, I know a couple of good venues, so
we can make a ChatDKG meetup, and then afterwards we can play some music. I know you also like to play, so
yes, so we have an agreement.
Yeah, everybody heard it. It's public. Now we cannot back up. Zagreb it is. Okay.
Sounds great.
Awesome. All right, everybody. I guess you can see my screen, and we can get started. So welcome again. This is another one of our open developer calls we call open office hours. Today there's a bunch of people with us for a very good reason. We're here to present the Wave 1 grants. Essentially, this is the highlight of today's episode. Episode sounds like Star Trek. Actually, that might be a good change of a name. Anyhow, we're going to go into the details very briefly about each of the projects. We're going to talk about grants in general. And this presentation, this go around, we don't have like a specific tutorial for you, though we've done for the people who might not have followed, the last 3 or 4, I believe, sessions were very tangible, hands-on live coding sessions. Basically, last go around we had guys from Google, from Vertex AI platform specifically. We had folks from Milvus DB who are also our partners. We had a LangChain tutorial, all of this together, of course, with OriginTrail technology. As usual, for the newcomers, we always start with a short intro. So actually, let me go ahead and just mention what the agenda for today is. So we'll start with a short intro. I'll try to make it super short so the people who have heard this intro or a similar one previously don't get completely bored out. We're going to mention what the grants are about. We're going to look at Wave 1 project presentations, and some of them are actually going to be presented by the folks on the call. We have, I believe, one grantee who is not present, but I think for a very good reason. He's at Burning Man. So, yeah, I guess I can envy him a little bit. Anyhow, we'll go through the presentations and we'll jump into an open discussion. So without further ado, maybe you're here for the first time. Maybe this ChatDKG sounds too familiar to ChatGPT and you're confusing it in your head. So let's set the context very quickly. What we really are about, what OriginTrail is about, is really about making knowledge a new asset class. We believe it is a new asset class, and OriginTrail as technology has been built over the course of the years, actually almost a decade now, iterating from closed source proprietary at the beginning as a small startup, all the way to open source, ecosystem versus centralized, decentralized, and completely open, permissionless set of technologies really that encompass something which is a multi-layered decentralized system. And not to go too deep into it, but I suggest if you're interested in looking into the depths of the technology and how everything works, how the decentralized knowledge graph works, how it connects with multiple blockchains, or how you can use it with AI systems, and there's a lot of materials on our website, GitHub, and so on. Or you can also approach us through Discord and just shoot a random question. However, we're focused really on this trusted knowledge layer where we see knowledge as really a new type of an asset. And actually, that's how we called the core component of OriginTrail, or in this case, ChatDKG. It's called a knowledge asset. This knowledge asset has some very important value propositions, such as they are ownable. You can create and own your own knowledge. For example, I was thinking the other day, I'm actually very much interested lately into music recommendation algorithms, things like Spotify and stuff like that. I kind of figured out that they're not actually that great. Like lately, I've been more listening to music that people recommended to me, or I discovered in a festival or in a record store. And it's 2023, I should be better. So maybe it's me, but I'm actually curious to understand it. I think big part of the reason is that the technology is built in this old school Web 2 centralized way, and it's not really so intended in the sense of making this music discoverable for me, this knowledge about music really, what is something that interests me. So knowledge assets can actually be a very good component that you can build solutions on top, such as more advanced, more open, for example, music recommendation systems. But anyhow, you can consider them as a primitive. They can be created and owned by anybody. The way you implement ownership with the knowledge asset, you basically get an NFT that's minted on a blockchain of your choice. Currently, OriginTrail version 6 is deployed on OriginTrail Parachain, which is a Polkadot blockchain, Polkadot Parachain specifically. But as of recently, it's expanding to other EVM-compatible chains as well. We recently published an RFC, RC17, which is specifically focused on this, and there's already a pending, essentially, initiative from the Gnosis blockchain ecosystem to integrate. There's also interest from other ecosystems. However, what I'm basically hinting at is that very soon you will be able to create knowledge assets on other blockchains. And when you create them, you mint this NFT, which represents ownership as well as gives you admin rights. That means you can also use this knowledge asset, you can update it, so on. Knowledge assets are discoverable because they're part of this big decentralized knowledge graph. So essentially, you can consider it as kind of a decentralized database. You can do all kinds of interesting queries on it, search queries in particular. And then when you discover something, you can verify it. So what does it mean? Well, you can take a knowledge asset, for example, that I created about, let's say, the music I listened to today, and you can verify that indeed it was me who published it, because you can see the address that was published through. You can see that the actual root proof of this knowledge asset, this Merkle proof, corresponds exactly to the structure and the content of the graph that is the content of this knowledge asset. And then you can also verify the entire history. So if I update it, change it, or transferred it to somebody, all of that is transparent on the blockchain. Finally, you can use that in all kinds of algorithms, including AI. And that's the core focus of ChatDKG as an initiative, because you can do a lot of things with the DKG without AI. However, once there was this huge boom of all of the tools starting to explode around AI, we decided that it was great timing to start ChatDKG initiative, which is essentially an initiative to build a joint framework, which is positioned at the intersection of AI and OriginTrail. So really kind of a precise definition of ChatDKG framework is that it's this open framework for efficient search, access, and utilization of trusted knowledge with AI. We kind of focused on this word search because the idea here is that as the DKG grows, as more knowledge assets are inside, it is critical that you're able to discover something that is of interest for you. For example, one search query could be like, find me music similar to what I already like, or it could be find me NFTs that have certain characteristics, or it can be something completely different. You can, for example, look for characteristics of particular physical object that you purchased, shoes, Nike, special edition, whatever, or a record, or it can be also a digital document. So essentially kind of like a database, but with various, a joint shared trusted knowledge base, essentially. The objectives of ChatDKG, therefore, are to create technical tools where we essentially join knowledge assets in AI. We establish best practices. How do we use these tools and these technologies? Because all of this is very new. The patterns are still to be formulated and even discovered. And another very big objective is to generate a trusted open knowledge base, basically by creating and crowdsourcing knowledge, by creating a lot of knowledge assets in the OriginTrail DKG through this framework. And there's an active grant program, as we mentioned, so we're going to touch upon that as well. There's 4 areas, 3 of them pretty precise, and the 4th one relatively generic, where we focus ChatDKG Framework. And maybe it's a good time to mention what we mean by this word framework, because a lot of people think, rightfully so, when somebody says the word framework, it's like your, I don't know, Angular, JS, Laravel, whatever type of language you use, Maven. I don't really even know what are the latest, coolest frameworks. Flutter, right? Or I heard of that recently. Maybe I'm just rambling. Anyhow, all of these frameworks, they are essentially frameworks where you like bootstrap an application or some sort, and you can sort of start from this core thing, and then it makes it easy. Or LangChain. LangChain is a really cool framework for AI. You can plug in different AI models, vector databases, all kinds of things. In that sense, ChatDKG is a little looser, so we do not expect to have like such a library immediately, in the sense of like 2 months from now, you're going to do, I don't know, npm install, boom, you have this framework, and then you can just go around. Rather, we see it as kind of a basket of tools at the beginning. So a basket of tools that we build through these grants that somehow fall under these 4 categories. And then over time, perhaps, if that makes sense, as we all together keep developing this, we see maybe we somehow join it in a joint framework. Now that depends, of course, on many different reasons, many different things. For example, if we were to now strictly require that everything is all of a sudden, let's say, a monorepo type of thing, we would have to likely, decide on a specific language that we're using or some specific elements. And it's really hard to coordinate at the beginning. So we decided, let's keep it loose. Let's let everybody build in the environment that they're best at. But as long as they build under certain criteria, we will be able to somehow fold this together later under the somehow in the same under the same umbrella. And the criteria are that whatever you're building has to be public and has to be an open source project. It has to apply to knowledge assets. It has to solve a meaningful problem, otherwise it doesn't make any sense. And because of this, this is just one of the reasons that where we want to unify all of this. You really kind of need to actively develop it with us. And when I say with us, I don't mean myself or Trace Labs as the core developers of OriginTrail. I mean generally the community behind OriginTrail, which is basically in our ChatDKG Discord. And as we start now with this wave 1, you should expect more activity there, because we'll be sharing lots of information and questions, or in problems, like if you run into a bug, that's a great place to ask. The 4 areas highlighted on screen are semantic search over knowledge assets. So the ability to create some reusable tools like libraries, user interfaces, whatever type of thing. Or you can see some of those actually in the previous sessions we had, where we showcased exactly this knowledge asset vector similarity search tools, where basically you have efficient ways of finding some relevant knowledge assets. Now that depends often on, for example, the knowledge domain. It's very different if you go into Swiss railway company knowledge assets or railways, or if you go into food, or if you go into music. It's completely different type of semantics. So therefore, building something generic, not that easy. Second group is natural language querying over DKG. We actually have one project that is working on this through the grant program. The idea here is that you can somehow generate a specific SPARQL query based on natural language questions. So you can ask whatever question you like, and somehow it ends up being a graph query rather than a question just on an LLM, which produces a generative answer. This will produce an extractive answer. AI-based knowledge publishing tools, that's kind of the other side of the coin. So instead of just discovering and accessing, how can we make it easier to create more knowledge, to populate the graph with additional elements? And one of the ideas here is to actually go towards some approach consisting of AI agents. So you kind of let's say you let a bunch of AI agents roam around the internet, look for some information, and create knowledge assets under certain conditions. For example, if certain information they find matches from multiple sources, let's say 2-3 different websites, they find the same thing, then let's say they could consider this information verified enough so that they could publish a knowledge asset. They meaning AI agents. And the fourth category is really general integration. So if you have an idea of some awesome tool that is out now that could be that would be very valuable to integrate with a set of tools with the DKG, maybe it doesn't have a specific, maybe it fits kind of in a little bit of in all of those categories. Anyway, this would be also something that would qualify for grants. So without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and highlight that the grants come in 3 shapes. We call them Rabbit, Eagle, and Phoenix, and they have certain level of trace token grants associated with them. The idea here also kind of we try to signal the name also to sort of direct you towards kind of like the size and the speed of the delivery of the project. So Rabbit should be the fastest. If you have like a small idea, something that doesn't like, require 6 months of development or like a huge team, but rather maybe it's like a small library that you think you could do in a few weeks, that totally qualifies for Rabbit level. And that will be awesome, because we truly believe in iteration. You can see that by, the history of OriginTrail. We've done a lot of things, a lot of iterations, and each one of those was like a very significant learning step and evolution of everything we've done, both our technology, but also the way we think and so on. So this is really here to promote iteration. So of course you need to build something that makes sense and it's valuable, but it can be small. It doesn't have to be like a, overblown feature, let's say, field project. It can be something simple and it can qualify for a Rabbit level, as long as it fits into those categories and basically positions that were mentioned previously. Eagle is a little bigger. Phoenix is the biggest level, this 100,000 trace. Essentially, it depends really on like the complexity, the size of your project. We kind of assign what we think would be useful, and then for these grants that we're actually able to showcase in a moment, we sort of we saw that it would be really appropriate to go with Eagle for most of the projects, because that also lets projects downscale a little bit of the workload, so they can also be faster. Which brings me to grants wave 1. So, and that I think is my last slide. We have really a very simple structure. There's 3 milestones for each of the teams, and you will see a total of 5 grantees in wave 1. That is TrueChain, Polycode, DKG Copilot, NetLang, KG, and OT Hub, which maybe you've heard of before, and was actually publicly announced. Congratulations to everybody who got into wave 1. We're super happy to see you, and both here on the call, but as well as being part of this initiative. The folks are going to present now. Everybody is going to take about 5 minutes, and you're going to be able to ask them any questions you have, or if you have feedback to give them, that will be also really valuable. everybody has 3 milestones really. The first milestone is M1. What we're looking for is really a detailed spec, and we're looking for it kind of quickly because part of this grant process was already sort of doing half of the work or more than half of this spec already. So by September 15th, we should have enough time to together provide feedback to each other's specs, see what can be improved, what's maybe not clear enough. And then once that is done, there's a certain portion of the grant funds that is already sent to deploy for the teams to deploy. Then a milestone 2 is basically a prototype. The idea is you can, as a team, you can create like some form of an MVP of your product, and you can demonstrate it to this audience at the ChatDKG call. So that's basically a requirement. And once you have that, then we kind of have a confirmation that we have a sensible thing running and we were able to reach this prototype stage. The final is M3, project completion, which we're looking to do by end of. And by the way, these dates are like kind of last dates, deadlines. If somebody can do their work before and we can properly test it and showcase in this fashion, that's also totally fine. One last disclaimer is you can apply for grants more than once. So if, let's say, you have some idea and you were initially thinking of going for some like bigger grant level, but it takes a long time, you can actually apply for like 2 smaller grants or 3 smaller grants. And if the idea makes sense to chop up in parts, that can also be done. So therefore, that also goes for all of the teams that are already part of Wave 1, but anybody who's considering to apply, just keep that in mind. You don't have to like invent the whole new world, especially in this intersection of all of these new technologies. DKG and AI are both very innovative. So it's like innovation squared in a way. It's hard, especially hard to think too far ahead into the future. So we encourage everybody to build smaller, and then we can get to some iterations faster and help each other easier, because smaller chunks, well, just smaller bites are easier to swallow. So having that said, I'm finishing this supposedly short intro, and I'd like to invite folks from the call to present their projects and in about 5 minutes each.
Test. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Then we did the mic check. Yes, I can, of course. I have everything ready. Can you see the screen?
Yeah, it's up. Yes.
Okay. So, hello everyone. I've already spoken at one of these with a presentation on what we were planning on doing. Very happy to be accepted as a grant recipient. I think first of all, this is a great way for us to demonstrate the ability of our product and to get new customers, of course, and new eyes looking at what we're doing. And I think also it's a very, very big benefit for OriginTrail, for DKG specifically, because it really widens the accessibility of DKG to all types of developers who might have been, a little bit intimidated by trying to do some blockchain stuff, updating NFT hashes or whatever. So yeah, I think it's going to be a very, very interesting collaboration going forward, and I'm looking forward to it. So to start off, it's what challenges are we solving? So implementing DKG, as in creating an application that uses DKG, just like creating any other application that uses blockchain, it really has a steep learning curve for people who are not blockchain developers. We as blockchain developers tend to forget this all the time. I kind of see blockchain development as this very simple, trivial thing. But to be honest, every time I've tried discussing with other developers, it's not that development is complicated in and of itself, but things like chain ID, gas price, gas limit, RPC nodes, these are all like new stuff that people need to learn, and new paradigms, new ways of thinking. And it really reduces the willingness of somebody to just play around. And we all know that the best solutions in software always come when somebody's just playing around with something, when somebody's just like, oh, I want to try doing this, and then it's something very interesting. Like very rarely will you plan out the entire thing upfront and then decide on the full technology stack. It's usually like cool development things are born through playing around. And to be honest, blockchain today really discourages playing around for people who are not blockchain developers, which was one of the reasons we actually created Polycode, which was one of the core principles behind this product. And the third part, but maybe even more important than the developer experience, is that user experience of interacting with blockchains is still very poor for end users. You know, you have to have gas. I mean, it's kind of being solved with account abstraction, but you have to install a wallet. You have to wait a long-ish time, depending on the blockchain, for the transaction to finish. If things go wrong, you know, you have to replay the transaction. Canceling the transactions means sending the same transaction, but with a bigger nonce, with the same nonce that will cancel it. You know, it's just a whole mess for developers and for users. So the Polycode solution is just to abstract away all of this. Pretend that the end developer and the end user has never heard of blockchain, and enable them, for developers, to build the apps on blockchain, and for users to interact with blockchain. So in the case of DKG, this would be primarily AI developers. And I'm sharing an office with a couple of AI developers, and they're always like smirking about blockchain. They really don't want to learn it. And so now they won't have to. They will just see the value proposition of OriginTrail, of DKG, and this will be enough for them to build the application, but they won't have to accept, learning blockchain stack. And for users, they will be able to sign in with their social media, email, or whatever else normal login method they have. They will just have to click some button to interact. They won't have to have the wallet pop up and then sign transactions or whatever. So it will simplify things tremendously for developers and for users. So how does it work? Basically, the AI developer or the Web2 developer interacts with the DKG Polycode wrapper. Sorry, this was from an old name. It remained the chart. And then the Polycode wrapper interacts with our SDK, which basically has two signers, which is the widget signer, which is if the user is signing the transaction in their browser, then a widget will pop up, which will allow them to sign the transaction, as I mentioned, with social media or whatever. But Branimir mentioned like autonomous agents, which would maybe scrape the internet and update the knowledge graph. Well, they would do this probably with the backend signer, because they would just make an HTTP request. They would authorize themselves to the backend signer, and the backend signer would then communicate with the DKG node, with blockchain, with all of these things to update everything and make it, fully functional. So all of these cases that Branimir mentioned in the intro, I think are served very, very well by this solution. Luckily, it's a solution we already built. So basically, our milestones are building wrappers for the SDK and adding specific functions which interact with DKG into our HTTP backend signer. So realistically, definitely within the deadlines that were published by the OriginTrail team, but realistically, I'm thinking within probably 2.5 months, we'll have the full production product ready to go. And yeah, of course, we're trying to, beyond the grant, we're trying to collaborate with OriginTrail to monetize this as a proper product. It's a fully open source product, so you can host it yourself, fork the repository. But if you don't want to do that, you can always use our managed infrastructure, which we will maintain for you, where we will take care of security, we will take care of all the difficult things, and then you will pay us a small monthly fee in our software as a service model. So I hope that was short enough.
Awesome. Thanks, Mislav. By the way, anybody who has any questions, we kind of have a session at the end of this where we have a slot for general discussion. But if you have anything, and there seems to be a question, but we can go right after each presentation. Okay, so there's a question. It says, the one question I have is, how do we ignore the mistakes made during the blockchain days are not created with AI development? Okay, I think it's some more general question for later, not specifically for Mislav. So I'd suggest we keep it and we let questions like this sort of group a little bit And if anybody has any, just feel free to type it in. But I think it's a very valuable question to ask. So yeah, anybody have any specific question for Mislav, or you'd like to wait with that if you have any for later? No questions. So cool. Seems pretty understandable. I think it was a pretty clear presentation and really like it. We're excited to see it come to fruition, and I personally want to try it like as soon as possible. So looking good.
Very soon. So yeah, looking
awesome.
forward.
Likewise. Good job. Cool. Thanks, Mislav. Then good luck with the first milestone, and then we have the next person on the list is DKG Copilot. That is Milos.
Yeah,
who is. Hello, sir. We can hear you well.
Okay, good. So let me share my screen, and we can quickly go through the slides. So yeah, I'll just stop for a moment to see if you can see my slides, not to like rush and then probably being kicked out. So yeah, I think we can start, right?
Shoot. Yes.
Okay, good. So yeah, well, basically the idea is to try to showcase the like value of the DKG in general through AI-powered Copilot plugin. So we took a use case where we want to improve research in general by providing access to verifiable information. So how we want to do that? Like Microsoft Word will soon release Copilot, which is a version of ChatGPT. And within the Copilot, we would be able to create the plugins that would help Copilot and the end user to basically, retrieve like important information. So we stick to the case where we want to support scientific research, since there is no room for any kind of like inventing data, which is common for LLM models, and also to showcase how we can do any kind of BI or trust data from the DKG. So those are like some like key benefits, and here I guess you can see like a demo that we did like a couple of weeks ago, where we tested out a plugin, a Copilot plugin within the ChatGPT. So it's not yet officially supported within the Word tool, but it's going to like be soon. But it shouldn't be like a blocker for proceeding with the project. So let me briefly overview the architecture and how we plan to do that. So first, here we have a user, and we have a Word tool. It could be a desktop app, or it could be within the browser. And then it has ingested the Copilot, and it has installed the plugin. And the plugin will do the following. So here we have like a showcase. It's not probably fully presented here, but it's an idea on how it will work. So first, we'll receive a question from the LLM itself. And then we have like a couple of interactions. First, with LLM API, it could be ChatGPT, it could be some on-premise model that we can use for retrieving additional metadata. So, for example, we can send the question and schema that we want to basically use for querying data from DKG. And we can expect like a couple of things. One is Sparkle query. Then we can also extract entities. And we can also extract relations. So we can basically ask an LLM model that, has an ability to like properly extract those informations and those metadata to provide like all of that. And then we plan to do a set of queries through the DKG client and to try to retrieve the requested data, but also we would like to retrieve some other data in case we miss or we can't create like exact query. So we can provide suggestion to user, or like we can ask user to provide more information or something along those lines. And also what we want to showcase once we retrieve the data, we want to show how we can perform ML over trusted and verifiable data, which means that all of the data retrieved to user are basically not coming from the LLM, but from DKG, and we are using LLM as an interface. So that's like a general picture of a project. And let me explain briefly how we want to split that. So first, we will provide a detailed specification, which means all of the required diagrams for starting the implementation, and also an API, so we have like a clear layout of integration points between different components. Also, another important thing is to create assets and to basically select ontologies for like those assets. So we already have two proposals. One is to basically use a schema.org. There is a schema for and ontology for scientific research papers that we can utilize, and it's a simple schema. And then there is some more complex schema that we plan to like utilize in the third phase of the project, where we want to improve on accuracy and precision. So within the first milestone, we'll deliver basically those diagrams, and we'll have data to operate with. Then by mid-October, we plan to have a prototype which is publicly available. Within that prototype, we plan to work only with the schema.org assets, so we can set the baseline in terms of performance, since probably we can get quite good results within the LLM itself. So according to the preliminary experiments, probably it can be done. But when it comes to a bit more like complex questions or a bit more enriched schemas, then it's not that straightforward task to solve. And then what we plan to do by mid-December is to basically submit the final version with more like complex and enriched data. And also we plan to improve accuracy using a few-shot learning, which means that there are several tools that we can utilize to generate Sparkle queries, and those are like supervised tools. So we plan, in combination with response of LLM, to like try to, with few-shot learning, since we don't have like actual training data, to try to adjust and to see what would be the performance of supervised learning compared to LLM, and how we can combine those two together. So we for example, get a result from LLM, which is near the query that we need, but probably not 100% sure fit. And then we can utilize supervised learning to correct that and to have a kind of feedback loop. And as an end goal, we will showcase data mining, some kind of clustering or GNN over retrieved data, which we can later return to users. So that's in a nutshell what we plan to do in the next couple of months.
Awesome. Miloš, can you give us maybe just kind of like the simplest example? You say answers can be retrieved from plugin. For example, can you highlight the question that a user on this particular architecture would ask, kind of a specific one? If, for example, this is focused on scientific research papers, could you, like, I don't know, share a question or two?
Yeah,
so that it's a little less, so that it's a little more tangible for people listening?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so it could be like a range of questions related to like a research in general, but it could be like list me top 5 most cited papers within a field of graph neural networks, so I can do an overview of field before conducting my own research or something within those lines. So we can like retrieve some like simple data, provide me with a list of papers that are related to a particular field, to like more complex questions, like retrieve papers from particular authors related to a particular topic, or since we have also abstracts of those papers, we can also summarize, for example, providing like the following 5 papers. Can you summarize overview of the field and what they did within the field, so we can get like immediate response with a summary, and then probably that's a good ground for expanding that and ingesting that within our own research. And by doing that, we are sure that it's not invented or hallucinated by LLM, but it's retrieved from the DKG.
Awesome. Thanks, Milos. Thanks for the presentation. If anybody has any immediate questions or comments or feedback, I think it's a really cool project. And one great thing about it is I think is that you narrowed it down to an area, because it's very easy to go too broad, too ambitious, too complex. And with a specific area, then you can basically narrow down a knowledge domain, which means some form of ontology, which means then you can leverage the power of the DKG the best, versus having kind of any ontology approach, which probably makes sense at a later stage. So sounds awesome. And especially if we manage to create a very interesting graph of scientific paper knowledge assets here, then we are going to be able, through this project, to offer really the scientific community an ability to do all kinds of interesting queries on these papers. To my knowledge, I don't know of a system like that, and especially through an LLM that's going to make it super nice. So I'm very excited.
Yeah, well, just like short comment on that before we proceed. So there are like quite good sources on data, on graph data related to scientific research. Like we can retrieve like citations for a paper, so we can connect them. We can also group authors by field and similar. And those sources are they are basically a result of some scientific research where they were trying to like collect all of that and keep that within some schema. And also one of the points that they made is that they identify that as a great opportunity for integration with one of the LLM models to like improve scientific research in general. And yeah, as you said, we have like a combination of LLM as a good interface, and also trust and verifiability through the DKG layer. So yeah, I'm super happy to like work on that project, and we'll see about the like result accuracy, precision, and etc. But it's going to be fun.
Good stuff. There's a question. Marco says, is the plan to use both Sparkle queries and semantic search LMs, or only one of those? Probably said it, but I'm half working, half listening.
Yeah, well, good question. I think it should be driven by the results. So according to the preliminary experiments, LLM is able to create quite good query for simple ontologies, but for more complex ones, I don't think that we would be able to like solely rely on LLM. So we should probably use some like supervised learning. But yeah, to basically address your question, we tend to try to utilize Sparkle queries, and probably to rely on semantic research when it comes to some kind of text analysis or summarizing impact of like set of papers, or doing an ML over return data. But we mostly plan to retrieve the data through Sparkle queries.
Awesome. I'm going to mark it as answered live. And since there's no more questions and we're kind of like running out of time, I guess, we can continue. We have Ivan back with us. Welcome back, man. And that was a weird thing. So let's test the sound again. We literally lost you as soon as you started presenting. So we didn't hear a word of your presentation.
Yeah, I'm now on Chrome and I'm without buds, so I hope everything will work.
Sounds good. So feel free to restart whenever you want.
So hopefully you can now see my screen, right?
Yeah. Yes, I can see myself.
Awesome. I won't go to slideshow because maybe that was the problem. So hi again, everyone. I'm Ivan. I'm from TrueChain team, from collaborating as well. So what we are trying to build is to create a system that can help journalists and everyone else to fight misinformation. So when I say misinformation, basically what I think is mostly the information that someone put online and then just remove that information or change it later on. And the example that I have here is basically this statistic that everyone referenced. There are like dozens of articles referencing this statistic, and everyone goes back to McKinsey, but McKinsey removed that information. Why? Probably is not relevant anymore or is not true anymore, but that's currently a misinformation that everyone is referencing. And the solution for this would be a system that looks something like this. So basically we have our initial user that is mostly going to be an investigator journalist that goes to a particular website, finds a snippet of text that they want to put to the blockchain. So after that, they submit that snippet to TrueChain. And what happens next is TrueChain needs to verify that actually that information is present on that URL. So it pulls the information back to that website, verifies that this investigative journalist is not actually creating a misinformation by changing it through inspect element or just sending misinformation directly to TrueChain. And after that information is verified, is then put back to DKG and saved after DKG returns the URL. URL is saved to database so that user can then trace back to that information on blockchain as well. And our main goal is to kind of create this color writing snippet that is verifiable on the blockchain. So to come to that, first milestone, as Brano already mentioned, is creating specs, and that's basically in collaboration with OriginTrail team, we will define architecture and write documentation for everything that is going to be developed. And then we have next milestone is create an initial API for sending that information and verifying it, and then sending it to DKG. And of course, a proof of concept app that will enable our initial user base to just start using it as soon as possible so we can test it and talk to them to be lean in developing this software. And of course, after that comes that version 1.0 of TrueChain, where we'll add additional data verifiers. Those are plugins that will be, like in LangChain, available for TrueChain. So you can have a web scraper plugin, you can have plugin that will go through a website that is basically a single page application and verify that kind of information, or in future API verifier that other Pay-Vault services can enable us to verify information on Twitter, Reddit, etc., etc. And of course, developing TrueChain front-end application or Chrome extension that then can be pushed towards users and start enable them to start creating those knowledge assets. And that's basically it. I hope everyone hear me now. Awesome.
It was great. I'm not sure if anybody has any questions, but I have one actually. So the way I understand it is, I would. I mean, I saw the whole application, so I understand it. Let's say more. I kind of know the answer to the question, but I want to. I want to put out there because I think it's a very interesting point. Is when you allow somebody to highlight a certain truth, let's say, this would create an assertion basically already by that user, and then the service that you're building is going to confirm it somehow on the other end. The question is on which, let's say, side or both sides of this equation outside of confirmation, do you also, let's say, take care of some inference in terms of what type of content this is? Have you guys developed this any further?
Yeah, so in the beginning, it's going to be textual information. So anyone can highlight any piece of text and then send it to, if that was your question, right? Kind of content. Yeah. So in the beginning will be textual information, but besides, when it comes to collab writing, we intend on integrating this with collab writing. We have a plan to adding audio and video collaboration as well. So after we develop a truth chain system, it will get a piece of transcript that will be able to be verified as well in audio and video in the future. But when it comes to this grant, I believe that the core thing will stay the same, basically. Only having additional data verifier that will verify YouTube videos as well, or podcasts, etc.
It will be useful to look into what other folks are doing as well, because there's, I think, very interesting integration points where, for example, you could infer that the content on the page, because you already have some semantics, you're looking at something which is maybe a blog post, or it's a quote from a person, kind of the surrounding, whatever is selected, could be used to further structure the knowledge asset. It could, for example, understand, this is an article, so you can take like schema.org and just like wrap the text around it. It's probably not that far, and it can be easily added, and I suppose, depending on the case, but also you can, like, if you use some form of AI, the AI can also infer some of it. So that would be really, really cool to see. But anyhow, not to take away from the original idea, I think the idea itself is really, really useful, and we are excited to see, once you guys hopefully build it in the way you envision it, to see if there would be, and how we could help multiple verifiers run these services. This would be really cool. So we'd be happy to try on our end as well. So we can maybe have more than two in certain particular knowledge assets.
Awesome.
Cool. Anybody else? Any questions? No questions? Then super. Thanks, Ivan. Good luck with the project. And we have the last presentation then by OT Hub team today. We have two people, out of which we see one person. Like I said, we don't have Darren today, but that's fine. We'll see him the next time he can join. So guys, take it away. It's your 5 minutes to present OT Hub.
All right, you guys see my screen all right?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so we are the OT Hub squad, presented by BRX, who we're considering the project manager, Cosme, which is me, will consider me the web developer, and Dimitri, the data engineer. I think Dimitri is the only one whose day job title is actually a data engineer on this list. So a lot of the community already knows what OT Hub is or stands for. We're kind of revamping it for the new V6. So there's big community demand for node runners. Pretty much everything the V5 did with being able to see your node and the rewards and getting knowing what publishes you're holding and the tax reports and everything like that. We're going to extend that and get even more network statistics and charts going. I know that's been requested of me many times. Getting there eventually. We'll have guides, and we've got a bot floating around. One extra thing we're adding that the old OT Hub didn't really do to kind of encourage this knowledge asset creation is we're essentially running free DKG JavaScript client API. So right now there's an API that you can send a request to after you request a key. It's live right now, and you can pretty much use the DKG client through an API for free. So you don't need a node, you don't need to have a clue how to do MetaMask signing, any of that. We have a stack here, very rudimentary stack. So our front end's in React, runtime is Node.js. We've got our API, obviously, we've got the bot, and then we have the sync that is custom built by Dimitri. That is pretty much what makes all this possible. We index the OriginTrail parachain so we can glean the data off of it to provide what we do on OTF. So we have a little block chart there, probably made by a 6-year-old or something, but it gives you a good idea of how everything interacts with each other. If the block is touching, it's dependent on each other. So, for example, the API, we offer data off of the synced data, and then you also have to use the React front end to sign for transactions that you queue and get your API key and all that. This is a big list of things we would like to add. Here being in Q1 where our beta ends, you can visit OTHub.io right now and see some basic infrastructure. You've got the front page that obviously needs a little work too, but we're getting there with time. Just need to make incremental changes to it. Right now, the main focus is essentially getting this API and developer portal / user gateway is what I'm calling it, so people can use this API to create assets if they don't have a node or anything like that. And then I do have a demo here, a quick demo. I think it's best if we just show it here. So I'm running locally here. It's all test data. You'll notice we're way behind in numbers here. But essentially, we have a portal here. You can see the assets on the current version of OTHub. We're not going to really explore that in this demo because you guys can see it live on the website. So what we have here is essentially a blank page, and this is where you would see queued transactions that a developer or someone who you were using their app, you use their app and they have queued a transaction for you. So what I mean there, we can go to our builds. Right, so I have not created any applications here, and as all on who are funded, so I logged in as with this wallet, so this is what the app's created under. We just have a quick card here, so we'll call it Cosme app. This is my app. It is really cool. Kind of. And it's built by Cosme and my website. And this is purely just informational stuff. So anyone using or whitelisting your app is going to have a better idea of what the application really is if you provide better detail. We can do 2 API keys. You'll notice there are some bugs here, but we're still working on it. So what we've essentially done is we've created an application with API keys. We can create more keys. This is just information displayed to you, and then anything you queue up is going to show up over here. So before I demo queuing up transactions, we're first going to have to go back in and make sure that I have whitelisted this application. So going to whitelist, there's only one here. We'll save that out. So I've whitelisted that application. So I lost my... So we're going to hop back into demo here. And hopefully, as demos do, it works. So we're just going to run a script that essentially, and here we're getting a problem because I haven't added the API. All right, so here. Okay, so what this is doing is we've essentially just sprinted through all the different DKG client interactions, but we've done it through the OTHub API. So here you can see our get transaction for UAL. We're getting state issuer, all these different things. When you get down to the create, update, and transfer, so those require a user to actually sign to initiate the creation, the update, or the transfer, right? So where these transactions are queued is dependent on who you have provided as the public address, right? So that public address that you've used in your API call, that's who that transaction is getting queued for. So you could come in, create your API key, and that's why the user has to whitelist your application, because I didn't want someone coming in here and just queuing up a bunch of transactions for a public address that just to troll them or queue up a bunch of transactions. So if you're a developer and you've used this API, you can essentially come here and use this URL. And that will take you directly to the transaction that was queued for that user. So in this example, I pretty much just use my own app and I'm queuing it for myself, but you can queue it for any public address you specify. So what essentially has happened here is whenever we ran through that sprint of transaction, those API calls, we essentially queued up a create, an update, and a transfer for this specific user. So if I come in here and hit this, then we're going to have the option to transfer or reject. And then if we go to the dev settings, you're essentially going to see everything that your app has queued up. I'd like to be able to click on the API key and show specifically what results were used with that API key. And you can also add restrictions on the API key, so it can only do specific kind of functions with the SDK. But this is essentially how you're going to be able to see what all activity your application is generating based on whatever app you've built, right? So you could build an app, include the API key, and it'll send out transactions to who's ever been using it. So that is kind of the gist of kind of the developer side that we've been building out. Again, everything that you know with V5 OT with the charts and the node dashboard and all that, that's all in the works. This has just been priority for now. So yeah, that's all I got for the demo.
All right. If nobody else raises a question, I'll just quickly raise the last thing you showed us. Looks really cool. Can you maybe explain a little bit of what you mean by queuing? So I suppose you put all of these operations in a certain queue, and I suppose the user of the API somehow gets to fund the account. I didn't catch that part.
Yep. So the queuing really only happens with the publish, transfer, and update. So that essentially, if you want your user to own that asset, we need you to sign for that asset yourself. So that function in the API is really only queuing it to a local OT Hub transaction database. So when that user logs in, they're going to see those queued transactions essentially in their interface, and they're going to be able to go in and actually sign that data and create the asset out of that. For the other SDK functionalities, that is just a straight one-to-one. We pass exactly what the node gives us over to you, so there's no fluff there. But we can't really do that. We can't just automatically create the asset for you unless you're giving us a public and private key, which we don't want to do. And I guess along with that, we don't really support the private data part either, because we don't want to queue private data. That kind of defeats the purpose. So
Awesome.
sorry, did that answer your question?
Yeah, totally. I mean, at least I understood it quite well, I guess. I'm not sure about the rest of the folks, but I suppose people also have hands and mouths to ask questions as well. So I'm not going to push anybody. We're already a little bit kind of over time. But yeah, that concludes the presentations for the folks of Grants Wave 1 today. We have one more grantee, like I said, who is, from what I know, with Burning Man, because when I asked him to participate, that was the response. He said he'll try to catch some internet at the sandy desert, but we were not seeing him. So he's not here. Anyhow, I can just say that this project is concerned regarding natural language querying on the DKG. So it actually falls in that category that we highlighted at the beginning. Awesome. So no questions for BRX, Cosme, or Dmitry. Good job, guys. I think it's shaping up really nicely, and I'm looking forward to seeing it both by end of the year, but also like what happens afterwards. I'm just gonna quickly remind everybody that the grants are still open. So this is not us closing the grants. The grants are going on an ongoing basis. There's a pool of 1 million trace tokens that you can apply for multiple times, and the overarching mission of fighting misinformation. You can go to this website, ChatDKG.ai, which is really a GitHub repo. You'll find all the info there. You also feel free to approach us, and pretty much you can jump into anywhere, Discord, email, Twitter, Telegram, you name it. While you're there, if you haven't still yet, join us in the ChatDKG Discord. So I expect to see these discussions ramping up much more now, since we have the 5 projects coming up. Yeah, just kind of a short shout out to everybody. When you guys make progress, or if you need any help, feel free to shoot in Discord, but also in the next iterations of ChatDKG Open Office Hours. It's totally a good place to come about, showcase something. If you have some progress or questions, or maybe you want to get some early feedback from potential users, feel free to use it as a resource. Of course, we'll have other guests as well, such as Google and people from Milus and other such type of guests in the coming episodes. So there will be a lot of opportunity to learn new stuff. But outside of that, you can also come and use literally the call as kind of like a resource of yours now that you're part of the grant program. All right, having that said, I'll finish with the usual: knowledge is power, and knowledge shared is power multiplied. So I hope you guys all enjoyed all of the knowledge shared with this call. I think they're pretty awesome. The 6th one was particularly interesting now to me. I know Google was interesting as well, and LangChain and everything, but seeing all of you guys building on the DKG and such diverse set of things, with really such a cool crew of people. I know some of you, like I've met some of you physically. I know some of you through the community for quite some time. Super happy to have you all with us and being part of OriginTrail community. And good luck, and keep building great stuff. I'll stop here. If I can open up discussion for anybody who wants to say anything at this point. It's completely free stage, so feel free to raise your hand, or offer a comment for any of the presentations or whatever, raise a random AI topic. And if not, we can also close the call and grab some beers. Looks like everybody's more excited about beers. Which is totally fine. We've been sitting around for about an hour and 15 minutes. That's just the right amount of time to close, I believe. So fantastic. Thanks, everybody. Looking forward to seeing the first results in a couple of weeks already. By the way, these specs are to be also published on your GitHubs. So like anybody will also be able to jump in and provide feedback. Maybe you can even publish, if you have it earlier, you can publish it earlier. So anybody from the community can come in and provide their comments. Feel free to invite them through all of the channels that are available. Also, the steering committee is at your disposal. Oshani couldn't join us today. She's one very knowledgeable member of the steering committee who you can also always ask for questions. So use all of these clever people to your advantage to make your jobs easier with your projects, or ideas that you might have with applying with your project for the grant. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of the week. See you, and thanks for joining.